She had the walk, the talk, and the curves that were said to have been able to stop traffic on Sunset Boulevard. Today, on this episode of The Fragrance Report, we'll be talking about Mae West, an icon in the fragrance world, not just old Hollywood. She had a hand and influence in creating perfumes in the 1930s, throughout the 1990s, and she also is responsible for one of the most iconic bottle designs still on the market today. I'm excited to talk about Mae West in this episode of The Fragrance Report, but if this is your first time listening to this podcast, this is The Fragrance Report. We talk about fragrance history. We have a new episode launch every single Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube. And if you're interested in learning more about fragrance history, you are welcome to check out our previous episodes where we talk all about perfumes that are as recent as the 20th century and the early 2000s, and even fragrance trends and fragrances in the ancient world. We have a lot to get through, so let's get started. As usual, I want to kick things off by talking about some fragrance favorites. I have here a few perfumes that I've been wearing this past week and very much loving. First, let's talk about an iconic fragrance. This is Gucci Memoir de Nodeur. This is one of those perfumes that to me is incredibly comforting. I've been wearing this a lot, and this is easily like one of the perfumes that I'll spray on myself throughout the day, especially if I'm working from home that day. It's a beautiful chamomile fragrance that has a lovely sandalwood musk base. And what's interesting about this perfume is that it does inspire so much kind of memory in a lot of people who smell this perfume. This is easily one of those fragrances that brings back an undefinable memory for so many of us. For so many of us, it smells like childhood. For others, it reminds them of like other forms of nostalgia, but I really love this perfume. It's an amazing fragrance, and I've been going through this bottle. And if you're watching the video version of this, you can definitely see I have been going through this fragrance. Another perfume that I've been very much enjoying has actually been this fragrance here. So this is a perfume that I believe a friend of mine got for me from Hungary, and I need to check up on where he got this from because he was going all over Europe, and he bought this for me from this like little boutique that had a bunch of I think essential oils and fragrances, and he knows I like fragrance, so he got me this perfume. It's called Lavandula, and basically this is a lavender fragrance. It's straight up lavender, and I've really been loving this. This is kind of personal to me. I don't even think this is available online. But what's nice about this is that this is like a photorealistic lavender perfume, and I've just been wearing it with so many different fragrances, with so many different pairings, because it's a very soothing fragrance by nature. This is lavender, so it makes sense, and I've just been very much enjoying this. I need to check to see if this is available online, but this is called Lavandula, Levendula, and it comes in this beautiful bottle that looks kind of like almost Victorian, kind of slightly a little bit, but I've been obsessed with this and very much enjoying it. Then I have a classic. You guys know I wear this perfume a lot. This is Oris by Commodity. It's, again, something that you've probably already seen, especially if you listen to my content, listen to this podcast. This is a beautiful celebration of the Oris note, and it almost smells, it's really interesting how it smells like an old Hollywood lipstick, which is very fitting, I feel, like with this particular episode of the Fragrance Report. It literally smells like an old school waxy lipstick. It's quite lovely. Again, this is Oris by Commodity. This is from their Archives collection. And then I've been very much enjoying Viage by Pernoire. This was sent to me just this week. This is a very citrusy perfume, especially in the opening, but as it dries down, you start getting some woody notes, you start getting some marine notes, but this is a strong perfume considering it's citrus, but it's not overbearing. I personally love the lime, especially in the opening of this fragrance. And I do plan on filming an updated kind of top 5 of Pernoire fragrances because I have so many of them that I've tried and so many of them have stood out to me. I really love this brand, but Viage is a new addition to my collection that I'm very happy to use, especially at the tail end of summer. It's still hot out. I still need something refreshing, but I'm happy to have something new in my collection. So this is Viage by Pernoire. Now, Mae West was born to a working class family in Brooklyn in 1893. She was born on August 17th, and her name at birth was Mary Jane West. She was part of amateur performances by the age of 7, and she showed an early talent for performing in front of an audience. By the 1910s, she was making a name for herself on the stages of New York. She was known to have a sort of femininity, a sort of charm, something that was very well received on stage. She wrote and starred in her own plays, but even at her early point, she was known to be controversial. Keep in mind, at this point, people were very conservative when it came to their idea of what a woman should be like, especially when it came to something as scandalous as performing on stage and in early film. Listening to this, you might be wondering what made Mae West so attractive as a potential fragrance muse. Why was there so much attention on her, specifically in the fragrance industry, when she wasn't a perfumer, she didn't have a brand? Why was she such a significant muse? She was a force, a unique force, in an era where women were expected to be silent and submissive. She was the exact opposite, loud, provocative, and uniquely in control of her image. She wrote her own plays, pushed censorship boundaries, and she also made sexual liberation a central part of her brand. So, when fragrance houses looked for inspiration in the 1930s and 40s, Mae West's bold femininity made her a natural muse that stood out. Now, what are the perfumes that Mae West is most closely associated with? Let's begin by talking about Shocking by Schiaparelli. The year was 1937. The world was still reeling from the Depression, and fashion was at a crossroads. And Elsa Schiaparelli, the surrealist Italian designer who rivaled Coco Chanel, was redefining what femininity looked and smelled like. She wasn't designing for the wallflower. She was designing for women like Mae West, bold, curvaceous, loud, powerful, and unforgettable. So, when Schiaparelli launched her first perfume, she called it Shocking, because how else do you describe a scent inspired by one of the most provocative women in Hollywood? But this perfume wasn't just about the juice. The bottle of Shocking itself is incredibly iconic. It was modeled on a dressmaker's mannequin shaped exactly like Mae West's torso, reportedly created by costume designer Gilbert Adrian, who dressed her in those legendary body-hugging gowns. The bottle had exaggerated hips and a narrow waist, and it was dressed in a form-fitting hot pink corset-shaped gown with touches of gold embroidery and a tiny flower bouquet necklace, a visual feast of hyper-feminine glamour. Schiaparelli's signature Shocking pink was itself a defiant statement, a color so electric, so unnatural, it seemed almost obscene at the time. Schiaparelli said it was meant to startle the eye in the same way a sudden trumpet blast might disturb the ears. And the perfume inside, just as bold. Shocking was not a soft floral or whispery aldehydic veil. It was an opulent floral chypre, animalic, seductive fragrance loaded with personality, with notes of bergamot, aldehydes, tarragon, and honey at the top, a heart of rose, narcissus, jasmine, ylang-ylang, and tuberose, and a base of civet, musk, amber, patchouli, and sandalwood. It was supposed to smell like power dressed in silk, with all the softness of femininity, but the structure and the sillage of a powerhouse. And on Mae West, it wasn't just perfume, it was branding. Being the icon that she was, Mae West did have several perfumes named after her. In 1965, French house Maison Maurice Blanchette released Mae West, a fragrance that bore her name. This scent was released at a time when West was experiencing a later career resurgence. The perfume promised elegance, sensuality, and a dose of old-school Hollywood drama. It came in a classic bottle, gold-toned and embellished with floral and powdery notes that hinted at the golden age of cinema. This was not a scent for wallflowers. Once again, like Mae West, it was confident and commanding. Interestingly, this was one of the first times a celebrity, particularly a woman, became the namesake for a fragrance line. Today we're flooded with celebrity scents at all angles and price points, but West was among the first. As we discussed, there are several associations with Mae West in the world of fragrance, but one of the most recognizable today is something a bit more contemporary. Jean-Paul Gaultier's Classique fragrance, Classique and Mae West by association, have also been the inspiration for other fragrances inspired by the feminine form when it comes to what's being released today. But let's talk about Classique and Jean-Paul Gaultier. Gaultier got his start in fashion without formal training. His sketches caught the eye of Pierre Cardin, who took him on as an assistant in the 1970s. From there, Gaultier built a name for himself with collections that celebrated sailors, corsets, tattoos, and androgyny. He challenged the binary long before that became a normalized concept, sending men down the runway in skirts and redefining what femininity and masculinity looked like. He used street style as high art. He questioned and redefined beauty standards, often casting older models, non-traditional bodies, and people of all genders and backgrounds in his campaigns and shows. His aesthetic wasn't just inclusive, it was rebellious, a deviation, a reflection perhaps of Schiaparelli. And in 1993, Jean-Paul Gaultier launched his first women's perfume, Classique, in collaboration with fragrance house Beauté Prestige International. The bottle was itself shocking. A curvy female torso in a corset, echoing the Madonna cone bra that Gaultier had famously designed a few years earlier. But the scent itself was no afterthought. It was lush, romantic, and sexually confident. Classique is a floral fragrance with opening notes of rose, rum, and orange blossom. The heart reveals ylang-ylang, orchid, and spicy ginger, and the base lingers with vanilla, amber, and musk. 2 years later, in 1995, Gaultier released Les Mâles, the men's counterpart. The bottle mirrored Classique, this time a male torso, designed in a sailor's striped tee, another reference to Gaultier's famous interpretation of gender fluidity. I actually did not know that Jean-Paul Gaultier's fragrance bottle did have so much influence from an old Hollywood actress. This was something that was very new to me and something I was really interested in discovering. I had known a little bit about Mae West and her influence, but it's really fascinating when we look at something that we take for granted as an everyday item, like a perfume bottle, or like the imagery that we see today, for example, in the Billie Eilish perfume line or in Jean-Paul Gaultier's line. We take those images for granted, but we don't really think about how we got there. And I find figures like Mae West absolutely fascinating. So if you also really are a fan of Mae West, do let us know in the comments below, or if this was your first time discovering about Mae West and the influence she has in the fragrance world, also share your thoughts as well. But as always, thank you so much for listening till the end of this episode, and I'll see you next time. Bye. This episode's music was brought to you by Kevin McLeod over at Incompetech. This is Beauty Flow by Kevin McLeod at Incompetech.com and is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license.